Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing an NFC East free agency review. If you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to my channel if my content is something you want to see more of. The first team is the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys certainly had an interesting free agency period, making both some key signings and losing some big name players. In terms of the signings they made, keeping Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper is very important for them. They struggled to tie Dak down to a long-term deal and ended up having to use the franchise tag on him. This is something that could end up hurting them in the long term, as they might end up having to pay him even more than what he's already asking for. In terms of the contract they gave Amari Cooper, I think everyone was quite surprised by how big it was. $100 million over 5 years means that it's the biggest contract a wide receiver has ever received, more than what Michael Thomas got off the Saints, and only Julio Jones is averaging more money per season. In terms of the other signings they made, Greg Zuerlein was a very nice one of the best kickers in the league, has been for 5 years at least now, quite a cheap deal. Clinton Dix was also a nice one, a 1-year low money deal. They added key pieces to their D-line in Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe. McCoy in particular was a nice deal, 3 years, only $18 million. Finally, Aldon Smith was a nice addition to that as well, a very low risk, high upside signing. Hopefully for him, he's managed to sort his off the field troubles and will be back to his best from 5 years ago. Moving on to the departures suffered by the Cowboys, they did have some key losses, particularly on the defense in the form of Byron Jones and Robert Quinn. However, these were sacrifices that they had to make in order to keep their talent on offense, particularly Dak and Cooper. Jones leaving will hurt, but the team was probably right not to pay him. He got the highest contract out of any cornerback in the league and will get over $80 million over the next 5 seasons. Letting Quinn walk also seems like a good move by them, as he got $70 million in a 5-year deal for a player entering his 10th year in the league. The best season of his career was way back in 2013, so letting him leave doesn't seem like too much of a problem. It's strange that Witten won't retire a Cowboy, as he's moved on to the Raiders, and they also let Randall Cobb walk, who's got the tough task of trying to replace DeAndre Hopkins with the Texans. Overall, I've graded the Cowboys with a B. Although they did suffer significant losses, they did a reasonable job of replacing them. Ultimately, though, they really need to tie Dak Prescott down to a long-term contract. Moving on to the next team, we have the New York Giants. They made a number of expensive signings in this period, most notably James Bradbury and Blake Martinez. Bradbury was paid like a top cornerback, so the Giants really need him to fulfill that. Martinez was also paid very highly, an expensive contract. However, he is one of the best tacklers in the league, and he fills a clear need for the Giants. They franchise tagged Leonard Williams after trading for him mid-season, and they really need him to improve on what he did for them in 8 games or so last season to justify the $60 million that they'll be paying him. I thought Dion Lewis was quite a nice signing at such a cheap price and should be a nice complement for Saquon Barkley. Moving on to the Giants' departures, they really didn't suffer many at all, only a couple of veterans leaving such as Alec Ogletree and Antoine Bethea. However, I'd say the signing of Martinez is a massive improvement over Ogletree, and to get rid of an aging member of the secondary who's way past his best isn't really a problem. Overall, I've graded the Giants a B-. They're massively dependent on how Martinez and Bradbury perform over the next 3 years to see whether they can justify the high price tags. Losing so few starters will give them a good chance to build ahead of next season with Daniel Jones at quarterback and hopefully having a healthy Saquon Barkley. The next team we have is the Washington Redskins. They made a number of quite short, cheap deals, including players such as Ronald Darby, Thomas Davis, Sean Davis, which all appear to be reasonably nice signings, quite low risk. The one sort of flashy signing they made was Kendall Fuller returning after playing for the Chiefs for a couple of years on a 4-year, $40 million deal. Although that is quite expensive, Compared to what Bradbury was paid, and I'd say that Fuller is arguably a better player, it looks like the Redskins actually did quite well with that one. They tagged Brandon Scherf, which is important to keep him, about 15 million a year. Hopefully they'll be able to work out a long-term contract with him. They also traded for quarterback Kyle Allen from the Carolina Panthers for just a 5th round pick, which I thought was a reasonably nice trade because there was a point last season where people genuinely thought Allen could be a franchise quarterback for the Panthers. Moving on to the departures suffered by the Washington Redskins, the Quinton Dunbar trade seems a particularly poor one, getting only a 5th round pick for a guy who broke out as a really decent starting cornerback last year. They were probably correct to let Eric Flowers walk. He signed quite an expensive contract and they needed to prioritise getting Scherf tied down to a long-term deal over that, something they've still not managed to do yet. They lost a number of veterans such as Penn and Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, but unlikely to impact them too much, I don't think. Significant change in the QB room with Kyle Allen coming in and replacing Keenum and McCoy, who both left after starting games last year. They also moved on from Josh Norman, who was particularly underwhelming after they paid him so highly 3 or 4 years ago. He was never able to live up to that season he had with the Panthers, so chance for the Redskins to move on. Overall, I'd grade the Redskins with a C. The Dunbar trade really brought their grade down. I think he was a really good player, had a breakout year, and they got so little in return for him. Didn't address their wide receiver issues. Terry McLaurin was great last year, but other than that, they really don't have any receivers. I'd say other than that, the team did okay. Made a number of cheap signings, so a C, I think, is a fair grade. Moving on to the final team, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. Their biggest move was undoubtedly trading for Darius Slay. Means they now have a top cornerback, and they paid him what he deserves. Only giving up a 3rd and 5th round pick for such a highly talented player doesn't seem too bad at all. Signing of Javon Hargrave, 3-year, $39 million deal, quite expensive, but it gives them a great interior defensive line pairing with Fletcher Cox. Made a few cheaper signings to bolster the secondary, re-signed Jalen Mills, also got Will Parks and Nickel Roby-Coleman. Apparently they're looking at moving Mills to safety after they lost Malcolm Jenkins. In terms of departures, they lost a number of long-term players such as Jason Peters, Nigel Bradham and Malcolm Jenkins. I don't think moving on from Jenkins was a bad thing as he got such a large contract with the Saints. They also gave up on Nelson Aguilar after his rookie deal. Certainly an underwhelming career with the Eagles after his pick so high. Losing 2 starting offensive linemen, likely something that they'll have to look at addressing in the draft. Overall, I've graded the Eagles a B+. I really like the aggressiveness they showed to go and get Slay, as there were many teams interested in him. I also like that they didn't overpay their aging veterans. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please check out my NFC South video. It's in a playlist which you should be able to find on my channel. The next division is going to be the NFC North, and the video should be out in a few days. Thank you for watching.